Welcome to this episode of Terry TV, and I am so glad that you tuned in. So before I bring on my guest, let me tell you just a little bit about him. It's almost 6 months now, I think. I had the opportunity of meeting him, and you ever walked into a room and just energetically, been attracted to someone and felt like this is a really heart-centered person and I want to get to know them? I'm sure you have. Well, I had that experience with Collin Campbell. It was instantaneous. I'm like, I like this guy. I can also tell he's smart and he's savvy and I want to know more. And I came to find out that he has this process that pretty much blew me away. He's not only a lead generation expert, he's an international trainer, he's an author, but I asked him to come here for a really special reason. It's because of what he blew me away with. And he has this technique where you can actually author a book, get ready, in less than 5 hours. Count them. That's 5 hours, all right? With this technique that he has, that's a self-interview process. And he shared this process with me, and I was like, what? This is unbelievable. I had Collin on Heartrepreneur Radio a while ago, and I have to tell you, he just gave value, pulled back the curtain, revealed everything. So you're in for a super treat. Welcome, my friend, Collin Campbell.
Hello.
Gosh, it's good to be with you. So I still have to tell you, every single time I tell someone to talk to you and that they can get their book in 5 hours, they're like, what? And I'm like, no, seriously, there's this process that will really get you to get the book out there. So they're in disbelief. So I'm hoping every one of them is tuned into us right now. So let's start with the basics.
Sure.
Why does a business owner need a book?
Yeah, that is the question, isn't it? I mean, I think we're wired to see a book as something that raises one person's perception over another. So it's something about a book that when you're an author of a book, people say, oh, they're an author. You're no longer just person. You're now an author with something to say. You've actually communicated something in the written form, especially something about the tactical thing called a book, that when you're able to hand that to someone, they have a higher perceived value. So that's if you can start a conversation, and if they read your book and they agree with your views and opinions and they learn something, then as a service provider or a product, if you have a product, then you've given them the criteria to buy that service or the product from someone like you. So when they're ready to make that buying decision, they come to you for that.
I'll just share because it's so true. I was at an event and I only knew a couple of people there, and somebody introduced me and said, oh, this is Terry Levine. Do you know she's written all these books? And all of a sudden there was a group gathered around me. They had no interest in me in the beginning. You're an author? What books have you written? Let me write down your name. I was like, got elevated instantaneously. So I totally get what you're saying. Really do. It almost makes you a celebrity, right?
Yeah, and there's something to be said about giving before you receive. I remember out of high school, I wanted to get some painting contracts. So I was going door to door and trying to get people to, hey, let me paint your house. And of the people that shut their door, it was a really hard process. And then I created this business card, and the business card said 7 things you need to know before you hire a painter, and call this free recorded message, because I learned, some marketing things. And as soon as I knocked on the door and gave before they even said anything, I would give them this card and say, I'm a painter in the local area, and I created this card to help you make a decision. When you're looking for a painter, this will help you hire the right painter. And just that, then I got a contract within probably, 15 doors doing that. They're like, oh, so you paint. We're actually looking to paint our back deck.
So that's how it works.
Yeah, that's when you have something of value that can help people make a buying decision, you give that to them, because the reality is most people don't have enough information to actually make an intelligent, informed decision. That makes them compare a service provider based on price which is the worst criteria.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is brilliant. So every single person in my world that I've ever mentored, coached, consulted with in business, that's like rule one, you need a book. And so now some people say, well, I don't want to write a book. I'll just get a ghostwriter. Let them know how this process is so remarkably different than a ghostwriter.
Well, the first thing is that it puts control into your hands. As a service provider, you're likely, especially if you have experience selling your service, you likely are very good at communicating it verbally. So this technique or this method is accessing that pre-existing talent to communicate with your voice, and then takes that communication and puts it in book form. And due to how the process actually works, it makes it very easy to communicate in a sequence that leads a person to reach out, especially for business.
Perfect.
So that's, and the other thing is price. I mentioned price, but it is, if you can get the copy, if you're speaking your copy and you're producing it yourself, then you don't actually have to hire a ghostwriter. You'll have to hire an editor to take that copy and make it, if you go off on tangents, you have to bring it back and put it in a logical form. But it really reduces the cost to produce a book. And I look at these books as a marketing piece, that if you're looking to get something, you've created a result and you want to share that with other people, this is a perfect way to get that book to share it with strangers to become prospects.
Totally brilliant. So, the process of, we tell people you can speak a book in less than 5 hours. And I'm sure people are scratching their head going, there's absolutely no way. Can you give them a little insight?
Well, I totally agree with that. And when I started out ghostwriting people's books. Like when I started looking at marketing and realizing that business owners that really want to position themselves should have a book, I heard down through the grapevine that you can just interview someone and get them to talk about their business and then transcribe that copy. And my initial experiences personally and with clients was that I ended up just ghostwriting the project. I took the interviews and wrote the copy instead of taking the copy from transcriptions and turning it into and editing it. So it was a really tough process to get the right copy. Did I answer that question?
Yeah. So what, if I say, okay, Collin, I want to speak my book,
right.
Give me some of what happens? How does it work? I'm so curious.
Well, that's the thing is, if you are the first person I did this with, we were quote unquote freestyling, like trying to jazz jam some copy. Like we were just, guitar and bass, we're just going to jam something out. And from that transcription, it was such a poor copy because we would go on these tangents and run on sentences that would stop and say, well, the other thing is, so not only it's like tangents within divergent tangents within.
I know what you mean.
Right?
Yes.
And then the end copy, once you try to take that audio and transcribe it, you're looking at it and you're like more confused about the process than you were to begin with.
True.
So that's in order to have the right copy, it really comes down to framework. And if you think about Stephen Covey has keep the end in mind, begin with the end in mind.
Start with the end in mind, yes.
Start with the end in mind. And when you think about producing a written document that's completed, the last stage, is formatting, but before that is the editing process. And editors go through 3 types of editing. And the first one is a structural edit. And that's where they're taking the story and placing it in a sequence that's logical to actually explain the story, to get it in a way that you're like, oh, this came before this. Maybe we have some flashbacks over here. If you're thinking about like Game of Thrones, you got like a flashback, go back to when they were children. And then we're moving in a logical progression to come to a conclusion. So the structural edit is where they're taking the written document and making sure everything goes in sequence. Then the second thing is the copy edit, which is making sure that your grammar and punctuation is correct. And then you've got the line edit, which is basically making it look visually appealing and formatting it and making sure that it's good to go. So if you create, and this is basically the secret sauce of this thing that I sort of stumbled upon through experience, was that if you have the structure, and it's a 4-part structure, if you have the structure and you have the right questions to answer, then you simply answer the questions in their proper order, and the document that you produce from the interview is almost finished copy. You might go on some divergence, tangents, but it puts the whole book in a logical progression that you can basically, what I call speak, record, publish. You know, you speak it, record it, have an editor edit it, and then you can publish.
I mean, it's just, it speeds it up so much. So first, as someone who's an author and written books and also dictated books, and also had somebody interview me for a book, and also a ghostwriter. So I could kind of wear all these different hats. None of those processes for me are 100% right. And what I mean by that is when I ghostwrite somebody else's book, I always feel like I lost their voice and it becomes more my voice. Mm-hmm. When I write a traditional book, it takes a long time to write a book. Yes. And then when I went ahead and spoke my books, they didn't go through enough editing. And so they actually have some real funky tangents, like you mentioned in them. And then the last one is a couple of years ago, I did decide that I was going to go ahead and have someone interview me and then put the book together. Yet it wasn't in a real easy, simple order. It took, I don't know, months of interviews. It could have taken 60 or 80 hours of interview to get like 150 or 80 pages. So, you know, when I hear your process and that it's 5 hours and it's just so structured and logical, it makes it a no-brainer in my viewpoint. Every business owner needs a book. And don't give us any excuses. You can have your book in 5 hours of speaking your book. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. Let's go a little further. So let's just say they went with your process. They're thrilled. 5 hours. They have a book. What do they do with their book? What now?
Well, that's, you know, the first thing is to get printed copies of your book and use them as an ultimate business card. Yes. That's the first thing, is actually get I've got my book over
here.
It's
looking for a book. I can see it.
I'm not going to go over there and grab it right now because I'll have to hop off the camera and I got to lay here. But I created this case study campaign, and this is actually a good, you know, in Seinfeld when Kramer created the book that was a coffee table book.
Oh my gosh, I knew you were going there. Yes.
Right? It's like I created this thing called the case study campaign. I launched a marketing campaign. It was successful. Then I wrote about it in a book called the case study campaign. So what I'm about to say is like a case study of the case study campaign. So the first thing that I did was, once it was published on CreateSpace, which makes it super easy, you buy copies of the book, and then you can create. The first thing that I did was I got copies of the book and I started making videos holding the book and creating trainings based on the chapters. So the first chapter is problems that the case study campaign solves, and one of them is commoditization. So each chapter gives me the opportunity and the reason and the justification to send them a training. Hi, welcome. Thank you for downloading the case study campaign. I want to share with you how to customize the campaign to you so that you can use it in your business. So number one, the problem that it solves is commoditization. And then I can go on and have a thread to really send a valuable communication to someone once they've opted into an email list or something like that.
That was absolutely brilliant.
That's a content application. The other application is I, as much as I love the internet, there is no comparison to me from a marketing perspective than going to an event, meeting a person face to face and having dinner with them and having a conversation.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
when you have a book, during that conversation, you say, this campaign did XYZ. I want you to have this. This is totally applicable to you or the client you were mentioning. And it's just that, it's like the Jedi mind thing, it's just like click, a rapport that happens that you can use that in a live scenario. You can sell it online. You can use it for your lead generation. So I put up a landing page as well for the book. Because it's on Amazon and it has a real value attached to it and people have bought copies, I can say on the landing page, it's a real value of $27.
Yep.
If I'm doing a webinar and I want the people to send or to stay for the end of the webinar, hold up the book and say, I'm going to give you a copy of my $27 book. It's a real value if you stay on. So there's so much application that you can use once post creation. There's so much application for it.
You gave us some great examples and I appreciate it. With my very first book, I remember, this is like 2 decades ago now, it's called Work Yourself Happy. And I remember my publisher saying to me, you're going to want to have 5,000 copies of this book on hand. And I was like, what? And he said, look, I'll get you copies for $1 a copy. If you're serious about really using the book to grow your business, you'll invest $5,000 and you'll have 5,000 books on hand. And my initial thought was, I'm going to have these books in my garage the rest of my life. Then I decided I'm going to use my books as a business card. And everywhere I went, just like you were saying, every conversation, back in the day, it was teleseminars, now it's webinars. People go to networking events and they're shoving business cards at you. And I'm seeing if you're a prospect and handing you a book and signing it. And that little book, Work Yourself Happy, leveraged me. Within a few months of that book coming out, my corporate speaking rate went up from $5,000 to $25,000 for a keynote. My coaching went up from $250 a month to $2,500 an hour, and it just kept rolling. And I tell people, there's a really interesting thing that happens when you have a physical book. And this is one point that I just want to expand on that you said. Make sure that you have a physical book. It's fine that you have a Kindle edition or a PDF or whatever. Please make sure you have physical books. I don't care how much Amazon is ruling the world with digital books. There are still people who want to hold a book in their hands, highlight the book, dog-ear the pages, and read the book. And people love to receive a book. If I send a book to someone and I've autographed it for them, most likely it doesn't go in the garbage can. Most likely it's there somewhere where my business card gets thrown away. So a PDF, who knows what happens to it. I have 1 million books on my Kindle. I haven't read a quarter of them. So I'm really going to, being transparent, really going to advocate that you have a printed book. And also, Collin and I share a similar mentor, and we're both fans of Joel Bauer. One of Joel's sayings that I must have heard him first say like 14 years ago. Seriously, Joel said, people can click from place to place. They do business face to face. And I agree. I mean, having dinner together, lunch, cup of coffee, you've got your book. So that's a great process. What is an action step that someone can take who's going, well, I don't know where to start. I would like to start, following this process. What's the first thing I should do? Any advice for them?
Okay. So when I went through the progression I'll take you through the progression as a ghostwriter, and this will actually explain the question or the answer as well.
Excellent.
Okay. So as I mentioned, the first time I did this, and for myself and for a friend, it didn't work out well because I didn't have the sequence. So the next thing that I did was I created a document with questions in it. And then what I would do is I would hop on a Zoom call or a Skype, and I'd share my screen, and we would walk through each individual question on a separate page. Now, those questions fit within 4 parts of a framework. And the framework is problem. What is the problem and or challenge that you're solving? Credibility. Who are you and why should I listen to you? What, have you been on media? Have you had successful, great clients? Have you been able to produce a financial result, weight loss? What gives you credibility? And then the tips that you want to share, you might say, I shared, I gave templates within my case study campaign, but you could say 3, 5, 12 tips, and then you would sketch those out before you hop on the call or on an interview. And then the last thing is, where do you want to direct the reader? What's the next step? So that's the 4-part framework is those 4 parts. So then the progression was, I was going through this document, problem, credibility, tips, and call to action. And I had my questions it was a Google document. And then what I realized is I could put this in PowerPoint. So then I took each individual question and put them on a single slide that I could just swipe through on screen share, ask the question to the client, and they would respond. And because it was visual, they saw the question there, it kept us on point. So if they went in on a tangent, then the question was right there. Then the really big breakthrough idea was, and in fact, I'd love to say that I created this, like I knew what I was doing, but it was actually, I wanted to scale. I wanted to get people to do the interviews and actually create a business doing this. Mm-hmm. So I created this PowerPoint so that I could share it with an interviewer so they could conduct the interviews. And in the process, I was like, okay, I'm just going to put a picture behind this, I'm going to take a picture and put it behind the question. And this was a breakthrough that it just hooked. It hooked me. And what it is in regard to the question, I'll give you a specific example in just a moment, but
Great.
In regard to the question, you want an emotional image behind it. So here's a specific example. Tell me about and if I say about in a weird way to all you United States people, it's because I'm Canadian. Tell me about your ideal reader. Simply define them. For example, Bob is 37, recently divorced, has 2 kids, and wants a new girlfriend.
Got it.
So that's the question. And then behind that is a picture of a beautiful relationship or a group of people. So in regard to the question that you're asking, there's an emotional image behind that. And when I actually tested this, I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, this is really good. So instead of systematizing this and sharing it with someone else, I was like, I'm going to take a case study group and prove that the system works. And the answers, the syntax, the quality of the answers that I got, the quality of the end documents, it was probably 10 times and how do you quantify that? But it was just so much better a result at the end by using the questions individually with an emotional based image behind it. So really, I don't hold back on the process because I want people to be able to produce better content. So you've got the 4 parts. You've got I created a gift. The first part, I think in your online membership, It's like, just download this gift. It gives you simple instructions and you just go through the first part of that 4-part sequence. It has the questions right there, the examples of how to make it effective. And you just answer the questions, record with your phone, and have that recording transcribed, and you'll see it. You'll be able to demonstrate to yourself how it works.
And I'll just share this. I haven't peeked at all the gifts that guests have given. Your gift intrigued me. I'm like, let me peek at this. And I peeked at this and thought, oh my gosh, this is going to make the process so easy. It's just amazing. It's simple. It's easy. And I really do find if we just ask questions Yeah, that's one thing. We want to get people tapping into their emotions, and the visuals do absolutely get people tapped in. So your strategy is just, I just have to commend you, salute you, hats off. It's brilliant, and it's going to help so many business owners write a book. It's phenomenal. So let me just speak to the audience and say, I'm talking to you. You absolutely need a book. It was transformational in my career, absolutely transformational. You know, I had no idea that when I wrote my first book, all of a sudden I would be quoted in Forbes and Fortune and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and speaking on stages internationally all over the world as a highly paid keynote speaker. And you know, who knew all of this could then grow into Terry TV and all these other crazy things that have happened? It really did start with a book. I was an unknown who broke into the coaching and consulting world from a different industry. No one knew me. There was a handful of, 100 clients, and that's pretty much it. And after this book launched, within a few months, all of a sudden I was being dubbed the guru of coaching, which came from writing a book. So I totally agree with this. What's one tip or tool that we can give folks as we exit this segment, which I'm sad to leave?
Yeah, I think I gave the process for the actual content production, and then the next thing you need to know is once you have your transcriptions, how do you actually instruct an editor to do their job in the best way? And what you want to do is you want to have an editor. You give them the 4-part framework that you use to create the content. And you say, this is the structure of this document. Everything I say in this interview and in this transcription needs to fit within this 4-part framework. So that's the first thing, so that they know, okay, these are the parts. If you are on your tips, and you're sharing a problem that goes back into the first part of the structure, then you have a copy edit and line edit done and formatting. I use rev.com for the transcription. So once you actually have your audio, go to rev.com, get the transcription done, send that to your editor with those instructions that I just gave. Once you have your document edited, then you want to have it formatted. And it's pretty simple. You can go to createspace.com, and they have templates that you can download that actually have the right dimensions. And you don't need to do any like gutter sizes and beat your head against the wall and formatting. You just copy and paste your document there, or have someone do it for you. And then go to createspace.com and follow their instructions. And there's a lot of tutorials online to use CreateSpace. So that is the whole process.
I have to just say, most people, they hold back, they kind of reveal bits. Thank you. You are just so authentic. You're a true entrepreneur. You just open up, give the process. I knew this was going to be one of my most valuable episodes, because Entrepreneur Radio, when you came on, that episode was just killer. So this is killer in a really good, appreciative way. So Collin, thank you so much for being a guest here at Terry TV. Your process is amazing. I just celebrate who you are, and I thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Terry. Really.